Hello, I'm Greg. Welcome to my channel, Midnight Oil Software, in another video in my series on implementing music and sound effects in Unity. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can programmatically transition between different types of music based on the proximity to enemies. For instance, we can have a detection radius for the enemies that will transition from peaceful music to combat music when you get close enough. And then when you leave that detection radius, we can transition back to peaceful music. And so you'll recall that I have a music manager class which has a set of music clip groups. Those music clip groups have music clips appropriate for combat or peaceful. And of course, I made them generic enough so that you could create multiple music clip groups for different situations. Like maybe you'd want to have one for dungeon music, or maybe you'd want to have one for a shop or a village, or who knows what. Basically, it is a easily extendable system where you can create music clips for whatever type of situation you might encounter. And our music manager handles transitioning between those different music clip groups. And I demonstrated that with a simple UI in the previous video. So if we go ahead and click play here, it should start by default playing peaceful music. Okay. And then if we bring up our little music settings dialog here and click the show test menu, I can transition to combat and back to peaceful. All right, so what we're going to do in this video is we're actually going to have it so when we go and approach an enemy, for instance, if I run up here, you're going to see there is a Minotaur that's going to see me and attack me. The music's not changing at this point, so what we're going to do is we're going to implement a system whereby we can programmatically transition from peaceful music to combat music and then back again. And we're going to introduce a couple of concepts in this video. One is dependency injection, and the other is a variation of the observer pattern called the MediatR pattern. Basically, we're going to use a SignalBus, which will allow us to completely decouple our music manager, which is going to process the zone change signals, from our zone changer class, which is going to detect when the player enters a particular zone and fires a zone change signal. And there's going to be a signal bus that's just going to sit in between. It's going to mediate between those two classes, so they can be completely agnostic of each other. The music manager doesn't need to know about the zone changer doesn't need to know about the music manager. This is a great way to have totally decoupled code, which is a lot easier to extend and maintain. To do that, we are going to bring in a package using the package manager. The package that we're going to bring in is called Extenject. So we want to make sure that in the package manager, we're under My Assets, and I'm just going to type Extenject. Now, if you have not already grabbed this package from the Unity Asset Store, you're going to need to do that in order for it to show up here under My Assets. And I'll put a link in the description for this asset. It is free. So once you have done that, you come in here and you download it. And once you've downloaded it, you can click Import. And this is going to take a couple minutes. All right, so once that gets done thinking, it's going to bring up this import dialog. And there's a lot of stuff that we can import. There's all kinds of sample things. I'm just going to go ahead and import everything. And I recommend you do the same just so you can play around with everything that Zenject provides and really learn it. There's a lot that Zenject can do for you that's beyond the scope of what I'm going to cover in this video. The main thing I'm going to show you in this video is how you can use their SignalBus to implement that MediatR pattern to decouple things. So we're just going to click Import and let that import everything. Okay, so our import is complete. I'm going to go ahead and close the package manager. Now, one thing we're going to have to do is I am using an assembly definition file for my scripts, and in order for my scripts to be able to see the Zenject namespace, I am going to have to add Zenject as a assembly definition reference to my assembly definition file. All right, and we'll go ahead and click apply. So now we'll actually be able to use Zenject in our project. Okay, now having done that, I want to come up here and I want to create an empty game object. And I'm going to call this scene context. And I'm going to move that up to the top of my hierarchy here and select it. And I'm going to add a component here, and it's going to be a scene context. And we're going to get that from Zenject. All right, and we're going to create a mono installer that's going to install our bindings for our dependency injection that we want to use in this scene. And so to do that, I'm going to go in here under scripts and I'm going to right click and I'm going to create a new folder and I'm going to call that installers. All right, I'm going to double click that and double click that. All right, so I'm going to right click and create a new C# script and I'm going to call that game installer. Probably should call it scene installer, but it doesn't really matter what it's called. And I'm going to double click to open that up in the source code editor. I'm using JetBrains Rider for my editor. You may be using Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio Community Edition or some other editor. I really like JetBrains Rider because of all of the wonderful Unity integration that it gives you. Get rid of all those extra things. I'm going to add a using Zenject statement here at the top. Now this is not going to be a mono behavior. This is going to be a mono installer. Okay. And because I have been working on a prototype, GitHub Copilot knows what it is I want to do. And it's actually suggesting the code completion stuff that I want to do. So I'm going to walk through this a little bit for you. I'm creating this installer here, and I have an override for install bindings. And really, I want to inject the SignalBus. So I have this SignalBus installer.install, and there is a container that you get with any of these installers. So it's going to install the SignalBus installer so that we can use it in other classes, and we can declare bindings. And we can inject the SignalBus into whatever class needs to access the SignalBus. And I'll get into the different ways that you can do injection. You can inject things as a constructor parameter for like a regular C# class. For a mono behavior, you'll usually use a property with an inject attribute on it to inject it into that instance. So in this case, I want to declare some signals that we can use when we change zones. So when we go from peaceful to combat or from combat to peaceful. So let me jump back out into the Unity editor. And I'm going to create another folder under scripts. And I'm going to call that one signals. And I'm going to jump in there and I'm going to right click, create C# script. And I'm going to call this one zone changed signal. And double click to open that up. And this is just going to be a class. Okay, it is it's not going to be a mono behavior or a mono installer or anything like that. It's just going to be a pure C# class. And all it's going to have is a string called zone name. All right, and that's going to be the argument that gets passed for that signal. And we don't need any of these using statements. All right, and so now if we jump back out into our game installer, I'm going to uncomment these two lines here. And so what I'm doing here is I'm declaring a signal called zone change signal. And then I'm actually declaring a binding for that signal. I'm binding that signal to a method, and it's just an inline method here where all I'm going to do is I'm going to take whatever arguments were passed in and I'm going to log them out to the console. I'm going to do a debug.log, zone change signal fired, zone equals, and then whatever the zone name is. So by default, I will have a single subscriber for this signal. That's just this inline method here. That's all it's going to do is it's going to log out to the console what zone we're changing to. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a class that we're going to attach to our enemies, and it's going to be a zone changer class, and it's going to use a sphere collider that's set to isTrigger. And so whenever we enter that radius, we're going to have onTrigger enter, we are going to fire this signal. And that zone changer is going to have a couple of serialized fields. One's going to be for the entry zone, the zone that you enter when you come into that radius, and then the exit zone, the zone that you change to when you leave that radius. So let me go back out to the Unity editor and up to the root of our scripts folder. I'm going to right click, create C# script, call it zone changer. Double click that to open it up. And that is a mono behavior. Get rid of all this boilerplate code. I want to have serialized fields. They are going to be music clip groups, an entry zone, and an exit zone. All right. And then we want to inject, using that inject attribute I mentioned, we want to inject a SignalBus, and we'll call it underscore SignalBus, and you can see it added our using Zenject namespace up here. So we're injecting the SignalBus. All right, this is all you have to do once you have set up your bindings. All you have to do to actually inject an injectable class or instance is just to add the inject attribute. Just like that. So we're going to have an onTrigger enter. And what I want to do here is I want to say if the other, if whatever it is that we're colliding with, whatever entered our trigger, if it's not a player, then just return. Because we only want to handle these events if it's a player that entered into our radius. If it is a player, then we're going to call our SignalBus and we're going to fire a new zone change signal, and we're going to use whatever our entry zone's name is as the name of the zone that we're entering. So remember, we have our music clip groups, which were scriptable objects, right? And we created a music clip group for combat clips, and we created one for peaceful clips. And so since we're using those names when we transition from one type of music to another, the easiest way that I could handle reusing those things without having to keep a separate list of what are the groups we can transition to is just to reuse those music clip groups in their actual name, the transition from one to the other. When we leave this zone, we want to do the same thing where if this isn't a player that's leaving, we don't want to do anything. Otherwise, we're going to fire a zone change signal using the exit zone name. All right. So now anybody that's subscribing to that SignalBus and to those zone change signals can handle those. It might be the music manager, which will say, hey, if I get a zone changed event, I want to change what type of music we're playing. It might be some animation controller that will play some specific animation. Or maybe I want to change some post-processing to make the coloring, the lighting get kind of eerie or threatening or whatever whenever combat starts or stops. So there's any number of things that we could do to handle those events. But what I really want to drive home in this video is by decoupling it like this and using this mediator pattern, we're not locked into any particular implementation. Anything can subscribe to these events and respond to them any way they want to. It's very, very extensible and modifiable. So let's go into our music manager. And we're going to go ahead and implement handling those events to actually change our type of music. So in order to do that, the first thing we need to do is we need to inject our signal bus, right? Just like we did for our zone changer, we're going to inject it here. Now, one thing that's going to be different in this class is we're going to actually want to subscribe to those particular events. Like, you know, in our game installer, how we have this binding here, that's one subscriber. Well, our music manager is also going to want to subscribe. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a private method here called subscribe to signals. And I want a zone change signal. And I'm going to call that on zone changed. So this was a case where GitHub Copilot guessed incorrectly of what I was trying to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subscribe to our zone change signal. And when we get one, we're going to call on zone changed. And so now let's add void on zone changed. It will take a zone change signal. I'm going to rename this to args for arguments. And so when we get one, we're just going to call play music and we're going to pass in that zone name. So you remember we've got play music here. We give it a music group name. It will stop all coroutines. It will set the current music group to be whatever that music group is, and then it will tell them to play next track. Now, I do want to make one slight modification to this. I only want to do this if we're actually changing to a different group. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to say if current music group, so if we have a current music group and current music group dot name is equal. Oops, I'm in the wrong function. I want to do it in here. If current music group and current music group dot name is equal to music group name, just return. Yeah, that's what I want to do. So if I'm switching from combat to combat, I don't want to do anything. Right? I'm just going to return. Otherwise, I'm going to stop all my coroutines. I'm going to set the new music group, and I'm going to tell it to play next track. All right. So that should do our nice smooth transition. The other thing I want to do here is I want to add an unsubscribe. And I'm just going to copy this. And I'm going to change subscribe to unsubscribe. And then in awake, or I guess start, subscribe to signals. And is there an on destroy or on destroy? Unsubscribe from signals. Okay, so we are injecting our signal bus. We're subscribing to our signals. We'll unsubscribe when this music manager is destroyed. When we get a signal, a zone change signal, we call play music with that zone name. All right, so now let's go back out into the Unity editor, and we're going to want to create, we want to assign that zone changer to our various enemy prefabs. So if we go up here to our prefabs folder, you see we've got this Minotaur demo here. I am going to give me a little bit of room to work here. I'm going to add component zone changer. And I'm going to set the entry zone to be combat and the exit zone to be peaceful. All right, and I'm going to do the same thing for our devils and for our gargoyle. So one thing you should be able to see by me doing this is we could have different combat music clips for different enemies. The way I've implemented this, you know, I could just have a different clip group for the gargoyle than I have for the Minotaur. We'd have a totally different type of combat music. It's very configurable, very extensible, the way that I have architected this. So now let's go ahead and add the orcs. I don't even know if I have orcs in this scene, but we're going to go ahead and do them now. So I think if I have done everything correctly and I haven't broken anything, if I was to hit play and then run over and get close to that Minotaur, it should automatically switch to combat music. Okay, and you can see I've got some errors here, so something is not set up quite right. And I can see right away, I know what I did. I forgot. So I have our scene context here, and I created a mono installer, but I never added it, right? So first of all, what I want to do is I'm going to add component, and I want to add game installer. Oop, wrong one. I want that one. And then up here under mono installers, I want to drag this guy right into there. Let me see if that fixes it. Go ahead and clear this. Okay, we're in combat. I'm going to run away. And we're in peaceful. I'll run back. We're in combat. And we're in peaceful. Okay, well, I think that's good for this video. I taught you how you can use a mediator pattern and a signal bus to decouple things and transition to different types of music based on the zones that you're entering or exiting in the game. In the next video, I'm going to show you how we can use animation events to play different types of footstep sounds depending on the type of terrain that you're walking on. If you're walking on this cobblestone path or a wood plank bridge or maybe a dirt path or on grass, you'll get different types of footstep sounds. And we're going to use animation events so those sounds get triggered right when the player's foot makes contact with the ground. I think that'll be an interesting video. If you haven't already, please do me a favor and click that like and subscribe button. It really does help me to grow my channel. And also go over and check out my Highland Panic game. It's available for the PC on Steam. It's also available for the iPhone or Android. I'll put links in the description for those. There is also the Black Friday sale going on at the Unity Asset Store. I will put links in the description for that below, and those are affiliate links. So if you do end up buying any assets using my links, I get a commission. So that is a great way that you can help support my channel, especially if you were already thinking of buying some assets from the Black Friday sale. So thanks so much for watching, and good luck on your game development journey.